Welcome to the Suicide Monk, and I'm your host. Today we're going to be speaking with D.C. Copeland. She's an author, a dramatist, and a disruptor of society. She has a couple books. One has been published. The others ones is in the works, and it's called Societal Dropout. Beautiful writing from what I've read of her book so far, and it really speaks to the soul, and the way she uses her words is fantastic. So by all means, check those out. We'll talk about those through the interview. We are also going to be doing on March 4th, this comes out, the interview. On March 5th, we're going to be doing a live with the Suicide Monk and D.C. Copeland. Those times are 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So please join us for that. And then if you'd like to support DC in any way, I'll leave all of the information in the descriptions where you can find her description where you can find her books and any information on her that you would like to know about. And then if you'd like to support the Suicide Monk, we would greatly appreciate it in any form or fashion, monetarily or spiritually, just lifting us up. Prayers, positive comments and encouragement are always welcome. So thank you very much, and thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for being a listener, and thanks for supporting this channel. We really do appreciate that, and we'll see you on the good side. Peace. And by the way, I just wanted to remind you all that we're not doctors and therapists. We're just humans have an open dialogue conversation about a very difficult and strenuous subject that we want to bring healing and awareness to. So please don't, I know that I do talk to some doctors and therapists, but this is all suggestion and things for healing that we've all used in our own lives to move forward and to sustain that. And I'm learning so much just from these people, but I just wanted to put that out there, that we're not here to give advice. We're here to give experience and what is working for us and what has worked for us in the past, and then to share those past experiences to bring validity to the value of our current state. So thanks. Well, welcome to the Suicide Monk, and I am your host, and my name is Britton. Today we have D.C. Copeland. She is an author, and I almost called you a playwright. I had to look up some of the definitions. Well, it is the definition, but you had put dramatist.
Dramatist, yeah.
Yes. Is that, yeah. That's a playwright, though?
It is
correct?
Playwright. It is. Okay. It is basically the same thing as a playwright.
Okay, but I like the word. I was like, oh, what is that?
Dramatist sounds, the creator of that art form called drama.
Yeah, I loved it. And then disruptor. Tell me.
So, in everything that I've been doing since the pandemic, it's been kind of all of my art, all my publications, all my poems, all of my plays, and especially this manifesto and the new book that's coming out, Societal Dropout. This is an artist manifesto, which you can get on Amazon now, writing under the influence of a millennial emergence.
I love what I've read so far. Love it.
Thank you. It's this idea of disrupting the way we think about the world around us, the culture around us, the society around us. And it's the one individual. You have said in your podcast, the idea of your gifts are not your own, right? Mm-hmm. So one of my gifts is I have an original and unique voice. I was born with it. It's never jived with society. It's always been, really? Like things that I just have never been able to adhere to the formula. Yeah. So one of my gifts is having this creative, unique voice that make people go, what I find people in reaction to me go, I felt that way, but nobody's ever said it in that word combination before. So that's what I mean by disruption. And that's kind of what I'm doing here on the planet.
I love it. I love that you're call yourself a disruptor. I do. I love that. I think that's, it's an intentional pushback on societal ways. And not just conforming, not just going and listening to somebody and believing it. It's reading for yourself. It's educating yourself. It's going outside the bounds of what we're taught and researching and doing history. And I love that. So really cool. I love that term. I might steal that from you.
Thanks, Britton. I think you're a disruptor too. I'm glad we're going to have this conversation.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, yeah, I kind of flipped the world off with this, but I flipped them off thinking I wasn't going to be here. So.
Right, and that is something to discuss, because when you encounter that, and maybe this is getting too deep too fast, but once you encounter that question, to be or not to be, as we were just saying, the question of, do I want to be here? I think that question is suppressed in society. But if you can ask that question honestly, that make it a choice. I don't have to be here. You don't have to be here.
Yeah, read this. You have this beautiful quote, and I don't know if I'll read this one, but there was another one, and it might be from the Hamlet, and that's, in society, the word suicide is commonly used as a noun. And this is an explanation of how you're using it in your book. That's correct, right?
Correct.
In the cosmos of this book, the word is a meaningful metaphor and used as a verb, as in, though I have suicided myself from society. Yeah. So cut yourself off from the norms, and that's what we're kind of talking about. It's not detaching yourself from humanity.
No.
It's cutting yourself off and basically going orphan and learning how to live.
When we realize that society is sick, that 1 in 4 people are depressed or diagnosed with an anxiety disorder or ADHD, it could even be on the rise, but it's at least 1 in 4 people embrace a diagnosis of a mental illness. 1 in 4. 1 in 4. So it's impossible for society to be healthy if 25% of us are mentally ill.
Right.
So when we realize that, it's almost like a no-brainer that, well, how would we be able to be happy in that society? It's impossible. And if you think about the ways in which society says this is how you should be happy. No, you know what? Britton, I don't even think we talk about happiness. I think we talk about coping and about what everybody else is doing. But I think once you step away from society, I realize I have to go inside to find that inner peace and that inner happiness.
Yeah.
And I have to, and it might look on the outside like, I don't know, somebody that's just doing society, but if it doesn't come from an organic internal place, then it's false. And what's the point of living in a way that's false to who you really are?
Do it all the time. I mean, it's how the boys with the big pants keep us in check. And the fortunate thing, and I was thinking about this as I'm watching some of your stuff, is that we do live in a society where we have freedom of speech. And people think that's oftentimes, well, I can just go out and cuss and do whatever I want. And actually, and this is what I loved about learning about you and reading some of your stuff, the way you formulate and articulate words is magical. Like, I love it. I'm not an educated man, and you put it in this beautiful format that I can understand. So, and then it inspires me to look up the words that I don't. In one sentence, I looked up 3 words of yours that you use. And just so I can, because I don't formulate words together really well. Like, if somebody's saying something, I don't have a good reference of what they really mean. So, because of my education level. So I'm self-taught in a lot of ways, and especially with reading and history and even math. I don't do math conventionally. I do it outside of the box, but I can get to the same solution.
So.
So how you formulated those words for somebody like me is fantastic, and I loved reading what I've read so far. So on that book, I never forgot where we were going with that. So it was probably the societal dropout stuff that we're really talking about, is dropping out of that norm. So
The dropping out of, I think that, like, one of the things about when you drop out of the norm, you can ask yourself the question, and I'm always going to say one of the things about the way I write, and I learned this from my mentor, and my mentor was named Harold Bloom, and he was a Shakespearean. He wrote this book, and I would do what you just said you did with me. I would look up words. He made me want. He made me want to elevate my own lexicon and my dictionary. I wouldn't be like, Harold, what does this mean? I assisted him. So he'd be like typing, and he'd be speaking and I'd be typing, and he'd say words that I didn't know how to spell, or like words I didn't understand. And then I'd go home and I'd be like, okay, wait, what is a theurgist? What is a theurgist? I'm going to look up. And then I'd be like, oh my gosh, a theurgist is somebody that believes that, there's a one, there's a God, and you understand God by knowledge, like a knowing, and that by reading and by, like, it's platonic. Anyway, that's what theurgy is. And I'm like, oh, I love that idea that, like, God is in the knowing and the education and the learning, and that's kind of what that's another way of understanding what this kind of God concept could be. Anyway, I did that with Harold. Harold was the kind of person so he wrote like 50 books in his lifetime. I mean, it was a blessing to be his assistant and to know him. And he passed fairly recently, and his passing was a catalyst for me to actually start really writing this book and getting published, and starting to, like, just take my gifts seriously. But one of the things he did was he always said he never said, like, there's definitely a place, Britain, I think, for, like, plans, like how to live a happy life, step by step, go through the steps, like, or how to overcome grief. And then there's a book, and there's a workbook. That's fine. That there's a place for that. But I feel that I fall into the tradition of like, I say and what I want the reader to do is feel that my I could be their I. So when they're reading, there's this feeling of, like, oh, I feel that way too. Like, but I'm not telling you how to feel. Like, there's a subtle but a significant difference. Like, in my work, I'm not saying to drop out of society, you really need courage and bravery and a traumatic experience. Find your traumatic experience and make it work for you. I'm not selling anything. You know what I mean? I am literally believe that my experience is not unique to the human experience. So by articulating it in the I form, right? Like, by saying I am allowing the reader to say, oh, I relate to that, or I don't relate to that.
Right.
But I'm interested in this story that this person is sharing with me, and I'm wondering where it's going to go, because that's the kind of readers the kind of writers I like to read. I like to read the people who are giving me authentic, organic, underground. I say to myself, like, I believe I'm part of an underground movement of, like, people who are willing to step outside the box and be humans together. Because I believe, I say we're living in a suicidal society. We're living in a society where the suicide rates are increasing. We're living in a society where the drug overdosing is increasing. So we're living in a society where individuals don't want to be here anymore. Like, it's an actual real problem. And I think one of the ways I find sanity and peace is writing the actual experience down. And it's not necessarily a pretty experience. Like, my experiences, I talk in the book about about sex, about even about rape. I talk about suicide and wrestling with the question of like to be or not to be, and whether I want to be, and the soul. Like,
Mhm.
let's talk about the idea of a soul, and like that's something taboo. You're not going to, no one is like, if you read the New York Times or the Huffington Post or the Washington, the soul is not going to be making some headlines here.
Right.
But for
Right.
me, I want to cultivate the soul voice. And I want to hope that like by writing from a soul perspective, a strong, overcoming, something that doesn't change, something that's transcendental perspective, it activates the reader's soul.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh,
So that,
it's
yeah,
total sense. Like it's the you become inspiring instead of trying to um, tell people what they need. So they follow by not just example, but there's inspiration in there that happens, and that's what I was really curious about on your approach on this, because I've been thinking about like how did you put it? What do I have here? Um, not trying to instruct, but provoke the
yeah,
reader. And I love that. And that's the inspiration to me. If I'm provoked, I am now inspired. And even, like, I'll be honest with you, as I read, or heard, maybe I've read and heard,
yeah.
don't
That's
remember
great.
which one,
I love that.
that of, one of the things you were saying about this very thing that we're talking about. And that's, you don't, it, and maybe I didn't hear the whole thing, but having that like life coach, we'll just say like a life coach
Yeah,
or wellness coach type of example is not what you're looking to do. And that's where the provocation came from, provoking. But because I'm entering into this field of trying to lead people
yeah,
towards something better, I was like, oh, that's kind of offensive. And I was like, but think about this. That's the inspiring thing. If you provoke somebody, if you give them, if it sparks the fire in their soul, that's what you want. That's really what you want. So how do you lead people without necessarily doing the norm?
preaching to them.
Yes.
I had a person that I would say is a life coach talk to me, and I think there's a difference between somebody who's preaching at you and somebody who's asking you questions in the Socratic. I think a, I don't. Okay, people say life coach, and there is a valid. I think there's a valid way of doing it, and this is the way I would say to do it. There's Socratic means of questioning. Socrates,
Socratic. Okay.
Socrates.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to the Greeks, right? Genius man, right? And Plato
Mm-hmm.
wrote down what he said. We don't know if he really said all this or if it was
Right.
Plato's invention. We don't know, but it's there and it's cool. So I'll tell you about it, right? So I'm inspired by it. Socrates was supposed to be the smartest man in Greece because he said, I don't know. He was supposed to
Mm.
be the most knowledgeable man because he would say, I don't know. And he would start questioning his listeners not with an outcome in mind, but with saying like, oh man, he would say like,
Yes.
is that really true? Here's a
Yes.
perfect example of someone who did the Socratic method with me. And he was a life coach, actually. We weren't in that dynamic ourselves, but he does do this. So he asked me, this is what interesting. This was like 10 years ago. And I was like, something is wrong. I am anxious all the time. I'm depressed. I don't know what's going on with me. I'm having a hard time like doing my day. I don't know what's wrong. And I went to a few different kinds of like psychology. This is my first foray into psychology. And I got this as a diagnosis. Oh, well, you're intelligent, clearly, and creative and beautiful but you have bipolar and you have
Mm-hmm.
ADHD and you're probably suffering from PTSD. Now I was like, geez, that's very heavy. And I was like, I don't know about all that. I don't know about all that. And I went to this guy who is a life coach. He's great. And I said, so and so, I have just been given these cards. I'm creative, I'm intelligent, I'm beautiful, but I have bipolar disorder and I have ADHD and I have post traumatic stress disorder. He looked me dead in the eye and he said, do you believe that about yourself? Do you believe it? It's okay for him to say it, but do you believe it?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what the? Wait, I get to decide what I believe
Yeah.
about myself?
Yeah.
I get to decide that?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't believe that. And this is so important, Britton, because and this is very provocative to talk about this because I'm sure some of your listeners have diagnoses of bipolarism and
Sure.
PTSD, and I'm not saying that that is incorrect, but I am saying, what do you believe? And you can, you are allowed to believe differently than all the psychiatrists in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm a huge Shakespearean fan. I believe that Shakespeare, his plays, his poems, his life has infiltrated our culture to the extent that like we are actually different because he lived. I think he's that much of a genius. He said in Hamlet, to thine own self be true. To thine own self be true. And I think what we're doing on this planet, the journey, the greatest journey that you can take, that I can take, the greatest journey that I can take is figuring out, and it's a lifetimes of work. It could be lifetimes if you believe in reincarnation. I don't know if I believe in reincarnation, but it could be lifetimes,
Oh,
right?
I'm going to be pissed if I get reincarnated. Think I was pissed this time around? No, I'm going to be pissed even worse. So don't bring me back.
I'm going to come
There's
back.
going to be some fighting going on.
There's going to be some fighting next time if I got to come back here, man.
Yeah.
But that idea that's, I get to decide what is true in myself. And I didn't, and when he's asked me that, truly asked me without, if I had said, yes, I believe that that's true, he wouldn't have judged me. I think
Right.
the thing about what you're talking about, like if we want to help coach each other, because I think there is an evolution from therapy to coaching that
Yes.
actually is a good thing. I think it's a good thing. I think the having an advocate. I was in the hospital for like a very long time, and like 30 days out of 80 days, and we can talk about that, whatever. But I have found a concierge doctor, and a concierge doctor is like an advocate. And I would say like a coach, like a therapist versus but therapy can be wonderful. It really depends on the relationship. Yes. I think between the person doing the advocation, the person, the Socrates and versus the listeners, right?
Yep.
Is the person holding space for you to talk about and discover more of yourself and to become more self-actualized? Or is the person, because I have experienced this, seeing you through a lens like, oh, I have diagnosed you with ADHD, and I'm seeing you and treating you through this lens of ADHD, and I'm not seeing you as a person anymore.
Right. So, and I'm 100% on board with you on this because of my own experience. You know, I was at the bottom. I was done, dead to rights, and coming back from the grave, basically. And it's this dying of self to be reborn. It's like that's like a forest fire. You know, if you ever go to a burnt forest, you'll see life starting to bloom out of it. And the animals come back and the flowers start to bloom and the trees start to grow grass around them. And they have this beautiful contrast of being charred and burnt and scarred and broken. They're beautiful, beautiful forests. But all this life is starting to grow out of the death of this forest. And it's magical. Magical.
It is magical.
Yeah.
It is magical. Yeah.
And as I think of it, I get all welled up inside. So that's really good that this is kind of the approach, because this is the evolution of things.
Yeah,
This
this is
is,
where we're moving.
because even in the coaching field, and this was my worry and this is my fear, is that I'm going into something that's saturated. And it's true. I look at it, it's not saturated, but it's saturated with people that aren't fully healed. And how good of how far can somebody take you if they're not fully out of this thing? Like mine is suicide. And I'm not ready to coach people, but I will be ready to coach people. Mm-hmm. Why? Because I'm changing the narrative of my life. I'm now rewriting the story. I actually like where I'm at right now because I haven't discovered fully what's next and how to put all this to rest. I'm in that in between where it's just this beautiful thing of this is where the flowers start to bloom and the epiphanies happen and life is really exciting. And it's kind of like that new relationship. And it's whoa. But when the epiphanies happen, well, the new problems start and you got to go through the process again. And that's what I love about this part. It also keeps me right here today, because I enjoy the process. I get to see the unfolding of something beautiful in my life because I just show up every day.
Because you just show up every day. And I think when you show up every day, when I show up every day, which I've been doing in a very potent way very recently, knowing that things are in flux, right? Mm-hmm. Knowing that like this is change, that there's not a rut happening. I become very sensitive. I'm going to tell you briefly that what happened, I'm not the same person that I was in September. I was diagnosed. I had to go to the hospital. I had sepsis. I had, sepsis is a blood infection. For anyone who doesn't know, it can be a fatal blood infection. And so I was diagnosed with sepsis. I was pregnant. I lost the baby as a result. I had appendicitis. And I had an ileus, which is a blockage of your large intestine. And I was in the hospital. I was in the hospital for about 30 days out of 90 days, for 1/3. And I'm a fairly young person. And I had never been to the hospital before. I never had something like this happen before. But there was so much. So I almost died. I had several living wills, and I had I wrote an actual will. So I was confronting death.
Wow.
In a way that I had never confronted. I mean, I had confronted this suicidal.
Yeah, the idea of it.
The idea of suicide, not being here. Right. And I had wrestled with that before, and I had thought about that, and that's one of the reasons I can articulate it. I had already articulated it in the book. The book had already been written, but I just had on 3 weeks post-op surgery of taking out the appendix, and that was the final thing that needed to happen to start healing. Now, this is the metaphor I use, and this is where I'm at every day. But I think it's good for listeners to be able to play with metaphors in their own life. Like you talked about, like the woods. So my metaphor is that for 4 months, I had this like infection, and I kept having to go back to the hospital. I was like flailing around in the ocean. I was at sea, and I didn't know and the ocean is powerful, and she's a motherfucker. She will take you down. I mean, you will die. But if you can tread water, right? If you can go under but hold your breath, you can work with the water. You know, if anyone who surfs knows, you get thrown, you wait for the wave, and you wait for the wave to carry you home. I was waiting for the wave to carry me home. And never came, or it would come, but then I'd get thrown out again. So I'm on a lifeboat. Someone picked me up. I got surgery and I've been healing, but the life that I was living in September is not the life that I'm going back to. I don't know what kind of shore I'm going to. I don't know what kind of country I'm going to. It's very, so every day, and I know that there's certain things that like I want, like I loved being pregnant. I
Hmm.
want that again,
Yeah.
I met the boyfriend that I was dating became somebody, he showed his true colors and he
Mm.
became really, he could have left, but instead
Hmm.
he was like this,
Blossomed.
it blossomed. And I
Hmm.
thought I would never, Britton, I thought I was done with love. I was like, oh, it's okay. I'm going to be a single mom. And I thought it was over with that. So there was all, and then other little magical things like like the soul of myself was like, I had this understanding of like, my life has been a really good life and it's okay if it's not, it's okay if it's over. It was a very, it was a very interesting experience of,
Hmm.
and then this idea that I've made it through to the other side, but I don't know what my life will look like. So every day is very much like it has that darkness usually in the morning of this darkness of like, we're here again.
Hmm.
But then it's like, but we're not here again. It's not the same here. It's
Right.
it's what you would call that forest that like and every day in the past few weeks since I've been in the clear basically of this infection, every day I see little flowers. Or in my lifeboat, I see like, oh, look, look at that beautiful sunrise. Look
Hmm.
at there's this beautiful sunset. I never noticed those clouds before. How the clouds look like little like flower buds and orchids, and. And so, yeah, I think there's this state that you're talking about, and it's like, it's it's exciting, it's precious,
Hmm.
it's. I think that it's intoxicating too to
Oh, it's
anybody
very.
that's around you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, it's
that's
very intoxicating. It's so weird because, and I don't mean this egotistical. This is really weird for me, honestly. But I was told I was inspiring 3 different times in the same week, not but a week ago. I'm like, I'm inspiring. Are you kidding? Like, do you hear? Do you hear what you're saying? And but as I think about it, my energy has changed, and my my excitement for life and my excitement to learn, and there's so much excitement. Like even today, push-ups. I'm like, oh, I gotta get those push-ups in. I want to do those push-ups, and I did more than I usually do, and I'm working up, and I'm training myself, and I'm like, I'm look forward to this stuff now, which is so weird because I could barely get out of bed before. And now it's not that my life has drastically changed. Still have a lot of the same things that would still send me over the edge. It's just my perspective on them is now of hope, of discipline, of faith. I mean, there's a lot to it. And, I'm taking myself through a regiment of really powerful things to balance my life, not to change the old narrative drastically, but to balance my life finally.
when you
And
talk about
I'm
the
sorry.
fear changing. You're talking about, and when I've been listening to your podcast about what is it like to live from a place of faith versus fear.
Hmm. And
And
I
it's a
see it.
choice. It's a choice, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not, and it's work.
Yep.
It's not like it is work, but it's worthwhile to do
Oh,
it,
it's
and it's
great work.
inspiring. It's inspiring to be around people who make the choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's also inspiring for me to see people where I struggled and try to guide them through it, not by my own standards of how I got out of it, but by the standards and how they see themselves, and then showing them, or at least allowing them opportunity to see themselves differently through my eyes, and helping them understand that there's beauty in them, and that, a lot of times, and I'll tell people this, and this is where generally people get caught up, is something's happened to them, something's happening to them, and they have all these other things in their life that are really balanced, but they're monocularly focused on fear. And it overshadows everything that they have in the foundation, because in that foundation, they should have faith. There's people surrounding them. There's love, there's kindness, there's exercise, there's food, but there's one deficit, and that's whatever they're facing in their life. And I'm like, maybe that's your greatest gift. And maybe that's how you give back to society, is once you get through that and see your gift in who you are very, very differently. Because that's what you're talking about right now, is how you went from this hospital stay to transcending in a way.
Well, what's an amazing, so the new book that's coming out this year is called Societal Dropout, right?
Oh, is that the one? You have another book then.
So I have this book called An Artist Manifesto that is now on Amazon, right?
I have the Societal Dropout written down.
You have Societal Dropout, yeah.
I do.
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
You're one of the few people. I gave it to a few, like,
okay,
fellow disruptors to read.
I was so confused. I was like, what?
No, you've read Societal Dropout, and right now I'm with my agent, and we're shopping it to different publishing companies. So
it's so good. I love the book so far. I can't wait to read more of it. I sat down, started reading it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I want to read this whole thing. So I'm telling you, words get me, and I think they're very, very powerful. And you know that. I am not educated.
That's the thing. I think words can change the paradigm, can change how you think. Like every time people tell me, they ask me, like, do you believe in an afterlife? And I say to them, I quote Hamlet, and I say, there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in our philosophy. And that's what I know about the afterlife. There are more things. I don't know. Here's an interesting thing. We talked about hope, belief, and knowledge. And there's a difference between hope, belief, and knowledge. And again, it's words. They're just words, but I love words because they can shift to how we think. So hope is something that I would say, like, it's fragile, it's kinetic, it's a fire. You can blow it out. You want to kindle it, right? Hope is just this precious spark. And belief is something that is experiential. Like when my friend asked me, do you believe that? Do I have the experience that I'm that I'm suffering from all these disorders? And my experience of myself, and this is why I don't. You might have a listener could have a different experience of themselves. They could say, actually, I have the experience that I am a bipolar, that I am manic depressive. Yeah. So that's the experience. My own belief, when he asked me that, I was like, my experience is actually that I'm quite level, but that I'm going through something right now, and that's the thing I want to focus on. That something right now is off, not something chronic. Right? So that was about experience, and that was belief. I think belief is experiential. So when I say I believe that collaborative energy, like the conversation we're having right now, is worthwhile to listen to have, that's a belief. My experience is that this is good stuff. This is good stuff. Yep. Knowledge. Do I know that as a fact? 100%? Absolutely. No, I don't. I don't know. I know that I have to eat and sleep, not every day maybe, but I know that, like, to live, I need water and food and sleep and probably shelter. I know those things. That's knowledge, right? But that's the thing. We don't know much. Like, we think we know a lot more. Like that's what I try to focus on when people say, like, oh yeah, I know that person's horrible. It's like, do you know that? Or do you believe that? Or, right? So I think it's interesting just to, like, play with, I'm just playing with words here because that's what we just talked about, but just that's the thing, word choices. For me, like, the words that I choose to describe an experience, they really matter. I'm not just flippantly like, I spend a long time thinking, what is the best word when I say disruptor or I say societal dropout, I know that like dropout has a negative connotation for some
Yeah.
people, and other people, the people that I'm hoping to reach, might be like, I like the idea of dropping out. I kind of want to
No.
do that too, a little
No.
bit to some
When
extent.
Yeah, and the way it's used is not in the connotation of failure, like I quit.
No.
It's used in a way that says I'm done doing this. And that's the, and that's what I love about the way you write is it speaks to me internally. And when I read the words, I'm like, oh yeah, oh okay, yeah, yeah. So that's the inspiration that you're talking about, and I love that. I think that's so valuable, and that's how we should. I think that's how we should, uh, in some respect, lead people, by that inspiration, by that example, by that quiet knowledge per se.
Quiet knowledge. Shit. That is actually the cure. And I should have silenced that, but that is actually an interesting person that was calling is a leading podcaster, and he always, one of the things about Jack that I'm going to say, Jack V. Hoffman does a podcast, and one of the things he says is there are things I have to do versus things that like having to do things versus like I have things I have to do versus having to do things, or like things I get to do versus I have
Yeah.
to do.
Yes.
So like it becomes like a different thing. Oh, like I get to have a conversation right now with Britain, like as opposed, I don't have to do any of this, right? It becomes it's all the if everybody. I think in society there's a lot of have tos.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of have tos and things that are like things that are like actually soul affirming, like that quiet voice you just talked about. I think that I think our souls know, okay, I believe that my soul has a very quiet voice, and the meditations that I do and the breath work that I do, inspire, right, is like
Mm-hmm.
breathing, right? To inspire is to like breathe in, right?
Right.
And like to breathe in and to feel that still quiet voice, and like what does it say? And maybe it doesn't like say English, maybe it does, like but to tune into that quietness and to have a life that matches its will, I
Yes.
think is a beautiful goal. That's something that I try to do every day, is to do exercises or to tune in to like what the will of that quiet voice is, because there's so much chaos and so much loud voices scream. This is what I think hell is, Britain. I think hell is a bunch of people shouting answers at each other, but they forgot the question.
That's
Right?
fair. That's fair.
Nobody asked the question.
Right. What was that question? I got an answer for it. I'll just give you an answer.
It's like, the economy sucks. Everybody's dying. Fentanyl problems. No, everybody's sleeping on the street. Tent cities. The administration's off the rails. The Constitution's dying. And it's just so loud. And it's like,
Yeah.
all of this may or may not be true. I don't know. But I'm alive. I'm a human being.
Mm-hmm.
What is my value on this planet? Is it that I'm a daughter or a girlfriend or a sister or a citizen? No, I don't think so. I think my value is that I am a human being having an experience, a mortal experience, a precious, I am that hope. I am that flicker in the candle,
Yep. Yep.
I can be blown out by circumstances that are beyond me. So it's almost like there's a practice of not taking my life personally,
Right.
not taking it personally that I had this miscarriage, not taking it personally that my body almost died of an infection, that this happened. not taking it even personally that I have health today,
Yeah.
or even that I have certain gifts that, like the gift of a voice, right? Well, one of the things that would make me want to not be here anymore is if I didn't actualize the voice that I have, the gift that I have.
Yep. And I think that's most people's problems is they're looking at society to feed that gift, to show them what that gift is. And really the gift is internal. And the thing you're talking about, that thing that speaks to you, that spirit, that a friend of mine is like, that the way you talk to, because I was like, I'm enraged, I'm pissed off at God, blah, blah, blah. But I also believe that we have God. My friend also, there's another friend, she's like, we all have a drop of God in us. So, that drop of God never talks poorly to me. That soft, quiet voice never beats me up, never ridicules, never chastises, never. It is always like, are you sure you want to do that? What about this? What do you think of this? Is it you? That's a great idea. What about looking at that? It's never forcing me to do it. It's giving me choice.
Yeah.
So I think what happened for me is I finally accepted the invitation and to listen to that, to be a part of that, to embrace that. And I found that really, really beautiful so far. Like, and that's where I'm in that in between. I'm like, I don't want to really leave here, even though I'm struggling in certain ways. And I still have some of these ideologies and some of this anger. I'm like, this is the beautiful patch of green grass in the meadow.
Once, I don't think you ever will. This is my thought. Once you find, this is my when I was 22, I met a man named Sri Dharma Mitra. He said, when I heard this, I was just floored. He said, God is dwelling in the right side of your heart, center of your chest, a little to the left, the size of an atom. And then he did the ohms and we ended class. And he also said, everybody has a 100-watt light bulb right in here. But sometimes, most times, it gets dusty and you need to do practices to clean the light bulb so that the light can get through. And that really resonated with me. I felt that. And I've never forgotten that. So like through my journey, so I'm not 22, I'm 40. Through my journeys, I have never, things have gotten dark, but they've never gone out. And I've talked to that place, that atom, that God in me, right? And it got very loud at the hospital. I mean, it was so palpable. I don't even know if it's sustainable how loud the quiet voice became, the presence of this other, because the body was dying. The mind, if anybody's spent time in the hospital, your mind becomes fakakta. I mean, it's like boop, 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 lights on, lights off. You don't sleep.
Horrible.
And the emotion of the miscarriage, the loss of the baby. So the emotion, the mind, the body, and the emotions were, for all intents and purposes, broken and dying and not unreliable. But that still quiet voice that I had discovered at 22 and probably it's always been there is the thing, right? It's there. It doesn't go away, but doing more activities to allow the light to come through, knowing that it's never turned off. It's an infinite field. The Bhagavad Gita is this Hindu sacred text that the Hindu religion is like the fundamental Bible of the Hindu religion.
Sure.
And what they
I think I've heard of it. But Bhagavad Gita?
Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
And they have something called the field, and it's changeless. It's infinite, endless. It is what you could call, it is another way of thinking about God, not as a man, not as a woman, not as a son or a daughter, but just it's a field of basically endless bliss, right? It's where the saints come from. It's where Jesus would have come from. It's where my yoga teacher probably came. It's where this conversation comes from. It's a source of infinite energy, infinite love, infinite compassion, infinite kindness, infinite generosity. You can tap into it at any time you want. I can tap into it anytime I'm afraid or anxious. It's always there. It's not, and this is very important because this is what I also realized. I can be in a very anxious state and know that it's there and know that I'm not necessarily feeling it at the moment, but it doesn't mean it's not there. And it doesn't mean that like anything's wrong, that I have suddenly, I'm a human being. And what I'm talking about with you right now is superhuman. Okay. So it's not like the goal, I don't know, like, the goal, self-realization, self-actualization, it starts with just what you are talking about today. And what I've been talking about today. It starts with just the realization of a soul, of a quiet voice that is never going to like say, you're a bad person. Like we we make a mistake. Like we can have bad thoughts, or not bad thoughts. We can have harmful thoughts maybe, but we're not bad people. We're all human beings,
Yep.
and things have happened to us. Like even the worst person. I would need the field to like have compassion for the worst person. Believe me, I'm not saying like I love it's hard. It's not. It's a choice.
It is a choice. It's hard.
You're on the road.
It's hard to love. Period.
It's hard to love
because we have a judgmental mindset.
Yeah, we're born in a society that is telling us which would you prefer? It's this or it's that. But what if it's not this or that?
Yeah.
And I love the way you articulated your voice. Like, well, maybe it's kind of childlike, isn't it? A little bit
It's very
like, well, maybe we could do that instead. Well, maybe we could. And usually it's a simple thing. It's like, oh, maybe we could go get a cup of coffee outside or something like that. Something sweet. Or
there's a lot of times, especially lately, it's like, why don't you just sit with me? Just come sit with me.
Yes.
I'm like, yeah, but I want to do this. It's like, okay, but I mean, I would really like to sit with you. I'm like, okay. Yes. And as soon as I enter into that, I'm like, oh, thank God I sat. Like sitting with this thing inside me, because creativity starts to happen, and those sparks happen, and thoughts that I've never had that are beautiful happen, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is
ideas.
Yeah.
Like it's fresh ideas. Like you're saying,
very fresh.
Like little flowers in
it's so, and when you get here, you want to share it all, and everybody come frolic in the field. But the reality is that they have to want to come to the field, and they have to walk for themselves, and they have to get there themselves. And you can run out and go help them walk there, but you can't carry them into the field.
No, you can't. And that's another practice, the practice of letting go, like, and continuing to say, I am feeling this. I love, which is, I've recently, now that I'm healthy physically, the grief, I can feel the grief. And I was feeling very anxious the other day, Britton, and what the little voice said, it was literally like, well, can we sit with this sadness for 10 minutes?
Yeah.
And I just sat and I started to cry. And I gotta say, tears are a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
The ability to cry, and I know we do not teach this. Like, this is
I
not
don't have a choice. You watch any of my podcasts, I probably cried on it. I didn't even bring my Kleenex yesterday, and I cried on it. I was like, oh, crap. I didn't expect that coming.
I always have to have my toilet paper around, as my rolls of toilet paper around. But just can we sit with this?
Yeah.
Can we not distract ourselves? We live in a society built on distractions.
Yeah.
We have so many things we can distract ourselves with. But just to sit with the silence, to sit with the sadness, to sit with the
See, that's the thing. Instead of beating yourself up over the way you feel, and that's generally what happens is, shame will enter in, fear will enter in, all these narratives, all these things that you've lost, all these relationships. There's something that's playing a tape that's unnecessary.
yeah.
And saying it's okay to be sad, and I'm going to sit with this today, and then all of a sudden you start weeping, and sometimes it's really heavy weeping.
Yeah.
But when you come out of that, and that waterfall of emotion has gone through you, and you've let it flow.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much healing in that. Your brain is actually able to recreate your neural pathways because you've released some of this negative energy, and now you're clear enough to be able to work through a problem or a situation or a moment with clarity.
It's oxytocin is released, which is a hormone that is it's a happy hormone. So paradoxically, when you cry, you're actually releasing this oxytocin hormone comes into your brain, and it helps your entire soma. And like, I think of the forest fire. It's like, tears can just be like that fire that cleanses the forest to allow the new trees to come. Because I tell you, after a good cry, I take a walk around the block, or I sit, or I talk to someone, and I am different. I think we die 1,000 deaths in one lifetime. I think
I'm totally up there right now. I'm at the end of my life cycle then, because I've already died 1,000 times.
Yes. I believe this. This is my experience. It's not like I hope I get to die 1,000 times and come back. No, I believe that that's actually life. I believe a lot of people are not living as in a way that that allows for this verticality of depth and light and healing to take place. And for some people it works, and they live a nice life of 90 years, then it's okay, and they live a nice life. But for many people, and this is my main concern, and one of the reasons I am promoting the book and using my energy to talk about the book and write, and I wrote the book, and I'm writing articles for blogs and stuff about stuff like the topics that we're talking about, is that there are many people that it's not working for, like the societal program where you live once, and you have, for a woman, it's, you have kids you get married at 26, you have kids by 30, you raise those kids, you maybe become a mother, or you maybe go back to work, but you get depressed around 35 or 40, you start therapy, you start medication, you live your second life.
Yep, you quit your career that you were so valiant about, and you reach the pinnacle of it, and now you want to be home.
And you cope.
Yep.
And life becomes a coping strategy.
Yep.
In terms, and you stay with a therapist or psychiatrist that's not going to ask you those questions, but just going to let you talk. And the therapist themselves probably hasn't gone any more there, unfortunately, because I've had to deal with about so many doctors. So I think this is in psychiatry, and I think this is in all doctorhoods. Many doctors, let's just be real here, they work very hard to become doctors. They work so hard, and they stop learning they become doctors. They make the money they wanted to make. They live the life they wanted to live. They get the house, they get their vacation house, and they have their money, and they stop learning. But but there's so much new research being done, so much scientific work being done. And there are a few doctors, and I have sought them out, and I work with them that are on the cusp of hey, new work is being done about genetics. New work is being done about blood type. New work is being done about diet, nutrition, all this stuff. So they're continually to do the work and to evolve as human beings, and to evolve. And as they evolve as human beings, they naturally evolve in their profession. But I would say, unfortunately, like 8 out of 10 people are not going to do that.
Right.
The evolution
Right.
never, the personal evolution journey is not where most people are at. And unfortunately, it's not even an option for many people to go on that journey. So what's inspiring about you, Britton, or like when people will say that, like, they're happy I'm alive, right?
Right.
Or, like that I'm here.
I get that a few times. Yeah.
Right? Is because what I can represent is somebody who has confronted the darkness. And when I decided the many times in my life to confront and embrace and go into the dark, to go into the forest,
Yes.
even if it's burning, even if I may not come out the same
Metaphorically,
person,
people.
knowing metaphorically going into a forest, but there's something in that forest, let's call it the soul, that needs me to go and get it. And everything else about me, all the rest, might perish in the process, but I come out or I stay and I have this bright orb with me, right? And it gets cleansed and it's clearer to myself and it's clearer to everybody that my life touches, and that's I love playing with metaphors, but that experience is, Gandhi said, one person can change the world, right? I think so. I think one person that has fearlessly faced the darkness allows for other people. It's a seed. Oh,
Yeah.
and they'll remember you.
Yeah.
Or they'll remember me in their darkness. And I'll get texts from people like years after I've met them saying they were thinking about me the other day. And it's so nice, because I'm a human being in my journey and I need to know that there's a reciprocity happening. I don't
Sure.
live in a void.
Yeah. No, I like that. That's, I don't know that I get that. I guess I kind of do, where people think about me and text me. It doesn't seem like that often, but if you really look at, and this is what the struggle is with a lot of people, is especially on this side of it, we don't feel loved, we don't feel worthy, but we're always looking at the darkness. And it's really hard to see the people that are actually right in front of us, which is amazing to me.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So I've heard you talk about God. Do you have like is it a Christian relationship? Is it just is it a God relationship? I don't understand.
Yeah. So
Talk to
that's
me.
interesting. So there are more things on earth, heaven. There are more. So there's like, I shift paradigms all the time when it comes to God. Words. Okay. So I don't know why I'm saying this, but I'm saying it. So it must be something necessary. Let's say I'm opening up my book and I say, okay, if I say, no, this is not an evolved age. If anything, it is evidence of a dark one where a most shallow representation of self prevails and the depth of the eternal calling is not only neglected, but terrorized into silence. However, just because a coyote howls in an empty wood where no one has the courage to go does not mean that it does not howl. Its call is simply unheard, and that is too bad. When I read something like that, which I wrote, but I would say I overhear it. Does that make sense? Like when I'm writing, I feel like I'm overhearing something. And I would say and I'm not saying I'm Jesus and I'm overhearing God. That's like not what I mean. It means that I feel in touch with a larger consciousness than my own individual consciousness. A field, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like calling down into my own time a song that other people can hear. I'm just tuning into it so that when I'm right, I'm connected to that higher consciousness, and that higher consciousness would be God. And when I pray, because I do pray, I
Okay.
don't know.
That was going to be a question of mine.
Yeah, I do. Okay, so I don't know if there's a God. Do I believe in a God? Do I have an experience of a God? That's an interesting question. I hope there's a God.
Did you have an experience
I
of a
have
God?
had, I would say, I have had the experience that there are more things than the eye can see. That when I pray to be in alignment with this greater good, with this essence of goodness, with this bliss, with this infinite compassion and love, it's a much better day. Let's put it
How did you come up with the conclusion that that's what it is? That it's good, that it's
that it's
compassionate, that
good
it's,
and
yeah.
compassion. I go back to Sri Dharma Mitra, this yogi who said God is dwelling in the right side of your heart center of your chest, and God is everywhere. He also practiced God is everywhere, and divine attention to the divine beings brings divine attention to you.
Mm.
I When I'm with Dharma, I feel a sense of peace, unlike anything I've felt with most people. And that's one of the reasons like another person can become a catalyst for your own. I can't be Dharma. Like Dharma has his own path, and his name is Dharma, which is duty to evolve the human race. So he's literally the word that he is. But I can be around him, and it's like lighting a fire. It's like he's almost like a candle, and he's giving me, and I'm a candle, and he's sharing the flame with me. And what Dharma says is that God is kindness and compassion. And what he is, who he is kindness and compassion. And so who I strive to be is somebody who is kind and compassionate. Now, is that who God is? Well, in the Bible, God is actually kind of a vindictive motherfucker. He like, cleanses the earth 1,000 times and like threatens to like kill like people. And he like kills Sodom, and he does genocide a bunch of times. Like, Noah and all that stuff. It's like there's like there's all these different interpretations of like the I would not say that I pray to a Judeo-Christian God. I would say my alignment with God is much more Buddhist and Hindu in
Okay.
its origin. It's much more like stoic, that the source of the happiness is inside. That there is God inside me, inside you, inside every single
Right.
person, and that God is actually like everywhere. The Hindu idea is that God is manifesting to the tune of Om, right? Like Om manifests the universe, and that the universe is actually a manifestation of love. And everywhere you look, you can find God. Everywhere I look, do I find God? Not necessarily, but that's the practice. And if I'm practicing that, I feel connected to something supernatural. It's not on this planet. It's much more akin to nature. Like when we're talking about the metaphor of the woods, right? Like I don't have anything to do with the fact that like the forest fire happens, and then there are going to be flowers that bloom. There's going to be new growth.
Right.
Like that happens. That's
Yep.
happening in me right now, whether I wanted to or not.
Right.
There is new stuff happening. And if I can attune to that, then I would say I'm attuning to something. I guess it's natural, but it's supernatural. It's supernatural because it's like it's going beyond words, it's going beyond form, it's getting really in tune to what is and how beautiful it is when when we don't put words over anything, or when we don't like think we know we don't know what that flower is going to look like, but we see it sprouting.
Mm-hmm.
And we can get curious. I think one of the greatest ways to like find God or find joy or get in touch is to like get in touch with nature and get curious about it.
Yeah. Curiosity creates a lot of healing, actually.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it does. Without curiosity, you kind of stay on the hamster wheel. You don't learn for yourself. You don't read for yourself. You don't try to get yourself out. You're always expecting something else outside to help you get out of what you're already in. And it just doesn't work that way.
When you say you're self-taught, like what do you think drives yourself to like learn more?
As a kid, I think one of the biggest catalysts was, and even recently I realized with my relationship with faith, I knew that this wasn't the way life was supposed to be. And that was a very young age. I remember the moment like it was yesterday. And I think that was the main driver, even though I lost a lot of memories growing up, and I became this thing that I wasn't meant to be. That I became. I think that was my main driving force throughout my life was, this is the way life is, but this is not the way it's supposed to be. And I didn't know that I had the strength, the power, the ability to change the narrative of my life. And that may sound like an excuse, but I'm really ignorant to it. I believed society. I believed my parents. I believed everybody else instead of believing in myself. And now, again, I flip society off by doing this, and it's actually a really good thing that I realized even recently how beautiful this thing can be. And that's also me part of me accepting the invitation into doing what I was meant to do. And that's walk with people. Now, was it meant to be suicide? I don't know, but that's where I'm at, and I'm the guy talking about it. So the beautiful thing about this is what's happening here is that I get to be a part of it, because anybody can do this. Anybody who's suicidal could stand here and talk about this. I accepted the invitation. That's it. I accepted the invitation to my suffering, and I accepted the fact that I can turn that into something beautiful. That's what we all have the ability to do. Accept the invitation to your life. Period. Because when you accept that, you'll start to say, I am good enough. I am worthy. I am capable. And now I get to relax and watch the unfolding because I get to show up every day. And I get to be part of this conversation. I get to watch it unfold. And that was my prayer today. I was like, just thank you so much for letting me be part of this podcast and watching the unfolding of something so beautiful.
I had a similar prayer.
Really?
Yes, I did.
I'm like, that's how much more grateful can I be to be who I am?
Yeah. Once you can ask, well, look, one of the most famous monologues in the history of literature is to be or not to be.
Mm-hmm.
It is literally to live or not to live. It is literally the question of suicide. That is the question. Hamlet says to be or not to be. That is the question.
Yep.
And if we don't ask that question to ourselves, is it worth it? Because it is a struggle, right? To be or not to be, that is the question, whether 'tis nobler to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of trouble and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep perchance to dream. So that's talking about the next life. Is it worth going through this life with all this friction and tension and conflict and people and things, or end it, go to the other side?
Mm-hmm.
And he ruminates about what would that other side even be like, because that's what gives us pause. right?
Right.
There's the
Right.
rub, as Hamlet says.
Yep.
Because in that sleep of death, what dreams may come must give us pause. So
That's a good
thinking
point.
about that, thinking about, well, what does it look like if am not here anymore? Do I believe there's another place to be? Is oblivion something I believe in? Where am I going to oblivion? All this is I think it's the most important question you can ask yourself. I don't think thinking about suicide is a negative thing. I think it is an important question to ask in the silence of your soul, and let my soul answer it. And
Hmm.
there is when I ask the question of to be or not to be, when I say, how's it going? Like being here, soul? Like what does it say to me?
Yeah. Yeah. And that was one of my big struggles is, and I think that's the fight that happens is I don't feel reconciled or, I'm sorry. I did not feel reconciled with my God, with my faith. And even though I still don't, and to a certain degree, I'm moving towards that. I'm not working towards it. I'm moving towards it. So I will be reconciled. I don't know where I was going with that, but I did want to, we've talked about this a couple times and about belief and knowing. And one of my things that I've learned through this process of dying and, metaphorically, thank God it wasn't literally, because I leaned over the edge on that. And, I don't know how I was pulled back by the collar, but I was. And I can only tell you that I had my God experience is that I was not done and he was not done with me. But I needed to lean over the edge. I needed to jump off in order for him to bring me back to a realization of what life is and what it really looks like through suffering and through pain and through joy. And that's this beautiful thing. But what I realized during this whole process was, first I have to recognize that there's a problem. Okay. And then believe that I have the capability of taking care of it. And believe that there's a solution. Believe that there's a solution. And then know that I have the capability of taking care of it or solving it or moving through it, past it, towards it. And the knowing gives you the confidence to live. It gives you the ability to stand firm and stand up even when things are really, really hard.
I think that what you're talking about, that knowing of the still quiet voice, that confidence that you get from knowing it
Yeah.
and developing intimacy with it.
Yes.
And in that moment, the reconciliation is that, like, the way I see you is already reconciled.
Huh.
So there's already that there. There's the consciousness of the process, and then there's also this perception of it. It is already there. You're already in it. You're already manifesting it.
Yeah.
And that's such a beautiful, and it's so beautiful to see,
Yeah, with my, it has a lot to do with my faith, and this is what I wanted to kind of talk to you about before we even got on here, was, I see people and talk to people that don't have like a spiritual foundation. It might be a belief in there might be a God or I'm spiritual, but they don't have an active and I don't know how to put this because I only have a partial language to this, and that's a prayer life. So because I separate prayer from meditation, even though they're very, very similar. Prayer is an intention that I go into very differently than I do with meditation. Meditation is to touch base with my internal God. Prayer is to touch base with my external God. And the external and the internal are the same, but my internal God manifests differently than the external. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense.
Okay. Sometimes I say stuff and I'm like, are you making sense? I don't know.
Yeah.
So when I see people that can't be led because they don't have a prayer life, then it seems to be and this is the thing, they're balanced in almost every area of their life except for that. And they can't get past, like, again, they have all these things in place, all these beautiful things, but their spiritual life is way out of balance. And how to bring somebody into balance is very difficult because it's generally charged with trauma in some form or fashion. So they really don't have a good foundation of what they actually believe or how they enter into that. They just don't want to be caught with their pants down and say there is no God.
No one really asks the question with sincerity. No, some people do. That's, thank God for those people. What do you believe? What do you really believe?
Hmm.
And so not many people think about what do I actually believe?
Right. Yep.
What do I believe? And then when you start asking the question, what do I believe? There's a lot of that comes with that. That's not an easy question, because then it
It's not.
becomes, well, am I living in alignment with that belief? Fuck, I'm not.
Right.
Way out of alignment with that belief. Maybe it's okay. Look, I think when you ask the question, when a person is asked the question, and I would ask anybody listening, what do you believe? With, like, truly. And if it means stumbling around in the dark for a while to find out, I'd say
Yeah.
stumble around in the dark to find out.
Oh, yeah.
And your faith is kinetic. It's transferable. And the light in your
Hmm.
eye, Britton, right, shows me that you have something. It's something desirable. It's something that people want.
Hmm.
And what I would ask is, hey, where did you get that from? Where
Yeah.
does the light in your eye come from?
Well, the 100-watt bulb got cleaned.
Yeah.
It's now 1,000-watt bulb.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you share your experience, and your strength and your hope comes from an authentic place of confronting the darkness. And it gives people hope that they can do it too. And you talk about your prayer life and your meditation. And then I am happy. And then if I don't have that, I might try it.
Right.
I started getting into, I do a transcendental meditation, and I'll tell
Oh,
you
I
how I
just
got,
looked that up. I just found out about it. I'm like, oh, okay. Talk to me.
it's great. It's okay. So, well, okay, I'll tell you. So a good dear friend of mine who I've known for ages, there was something different. I hadn't seen him in like a year or 2 years. And we met up for dinner, and there was something different about him. And I didn't know what was different, but there was like, he talked about himself. He said to me with lots of peace, he said, yes, sometimes I play the clown. But he said it without judging himself. He said it just with, like, this kind of inner awareness. And it's true, Jeff is a very good clown. He makes people laugh, makes people feel good about themselves. It's a very positive trait, but it can be a sad trait too. I think there's the idea
Mm-hmm.
of the Robin Williams sacred
Yep.
clown, making everyone laugh, but you're kind of crying.
Yep.
So there's that essence of that. But he was very much like, yeah, sometimes I play the clown. But there was just this light in his eye, and the way he said that with so much inner awareness of who he really is to other people. And I said, Jeff, what's going on? What are you doing, man? Like, what's going on? And he's like, TM. And I'm like, what is TM? He's like, transcendental meditation. I went to the Transcendental Meditation Center in New York City, and I got my mantra, and I, like, learned how to do it, and I do it for 20 minutes a day, or like 40 minutes a day. I think he said it was two 20-minute sessions. And yeah. And I was like, well, I'm going to try this. This sounds very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went, and it was founded in New York City. It was founded by the creative genius, David Lynch. He created this center. So that's
Okay.
interesting. an
I don't know
interesting.
who David Lynch is.
David Lynch is a director who did a TV show called Twin Peaks
Oh, yeah.
and Mulholland Drive.
Hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, so he is a very unique kind of human being. He is an original voice and he is a meditator. And one of the things that he talks about is capturing ideas and like being in the silence, in that silence so that you can catch an idea
Hmm.
as it comes back.
Oh, yeah.
New idea.
Yeah.
So that's the essence of TM is that you basically get a mantra and you sit and you repeat the mantra for 5 to 20 minutes and your mind goes all over the place. One of the things about TM, and this is about, I think, any kind of meditation, so it's worth mentioning, is that our minds are going like this, like my hand gesture, right, is up and down, up and down, up and down. That's just that's the mind minding,
Right.
right? Meditation is about witnessing the mind minding and knowing that you are not the mind.
Right.
You're more than the mind, right?
Yep.
That's the benefit of meditation. But one thing about TM is that the mantra that you're repeating silently in your mind makes you drop really down into this in water you got the choppy water up top, but the more you go down into the ocean, the stiller it gets, the quieter, the darker it gets, the quieter it gets, and that mantra is kind of like your line to go down deep into the silence, right? And then you let go, but you're letting go of the mantra. You're not saying it all the time. It's kind of like you're listening to it. So then the mind goes, and then the mantra goes down, takes you right down, and it's just it's a lot of people that have PTSD have found a lot of relief with this, and a lot of people who have mental illness. So check out TM, Transcendental Meditation, for anybody that's interested in what I'm talking about. But it definitely is kind of like if you're fishing. It's a kind of meditation where it's like you're casting a line into the deeper, a very long line into infinite waters.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll definitely read up more on it. I meditate just with breath work and a simple focus word. Just in through the nose, out through the mouth, and one simple focus word to stop all the monkeys and shut them up. Yeah. And I've learned how to compartmentalize all my problems doing that. Like my relationships go in one box, my job goes in this box, this goes in this box, and it just goes around this thing. But my focus word's right here, and that's what if I start thinking about this stuff, I'm like focus word, and I breathe, and I'll enter into that for anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour and a half. Is how that. Yeah, I was in an hour and a half, doing an hour and a half there for a little while through January. And I was like, what? I was just enjoying being in that state and being present in that. And time just went by. It just goes. It's like being in a dream state.
Yeah. Or like this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, we are. I don't know. We never even heard about your life story. I mean, we haven't even heard that. We might have to do another one of these, DC. We might have to do another one of these.
Well, maybe when it actually comes out. So we're negotiating with publishing companies right now, so it won't come out for a few months. But maybe we can.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, for sure. I'd love that. We are going to have to close up, unfortunately. But let me ask you this: do you have anything that's really profoundly changed you that you want to give back to our listeners today that we may not have mentioned already?
Well, it's not in the book because I wrote the book and then I was in the hospital. So I'll say, well,
in regards to suicide growth,
in the darkness. Okay, I got one for you. I was diagnosed with a mutation that I don't have as many liver, I have half the liver enzymes as a normal person. And that was actually what was manifesting symptoms of bipolar. I'm going to tell, it's called the MTFHR mutation. You can get tested for this. Most people will not test this. You will exhibit, if you have it, bipolarism. You will exhibit mental illness. You will also not be able to digest food correctly. You might say you have a gluten allergy. Okay. There's a lot of things that the MTHFR mutation, which was just recently discovered like 15 years ago, can do to your body. But I didn't know I had this. And all the doctors were saying, you have a mental disorder, or we don't know what's wrong with you. It must be in your head. And I was like, fuck you all. Don't know. It's not that. I don't know what it is, but I don't know. And I told my God, because I had already kind of found this place inside me, 40 days. I'm going to kill myself, basically. I'm done. I'm giving you 40 days to find a solution to this problem. 40 days.
Why 40?
Because that's what God gave Noah. I don't know. 40 days.
That's where I thought you were going with that.
There was something, right? Like, I was raised in the Judeo-Christian religion.
Right.
So 40 days seemed somehow like Moses in the desert wandering for 40 years.
Profoundly holy.
I felt like that was like God gave people 40 days. So I'm going to give you 40 days. God,
right,
fix me up, or like, because nobody's giving me a solution. And I was dying. Like, I was losing weight, wasn't able to eat, was completely, and I had written a lot of good stuff, I felt. So I was like, all right, I could be done. I could just be done. Mm-hmm. That night I had a dream. And there was this, all right, I'm just going to tell you my dream. My dream was that this rock star came to me in my dream. And we walked and we talked on mountains. And this dream was not really a dream. It was more like a experience. It was like an out-of-body experience. I mean, this dream seemed to go on forever.
Kind of surreal, would that be?
Surreal, a vision, something like that. Mm-hmm. At the end of this dream, this rock singer is sitting on my bed after we had gone through this whole experience and talked a lot. And he shoots himself in the head. And he dies. I wake up and I write all this down. I'm like, whoa, that was interesting. And I had just given God 40 days. Remember this. So I'm like, okay, that was an interest. And I had gotten a lot of information in that dream. And I forgot how I spent the day, but I was a little bit like, go back. I dream again the next night. And we go on another walk. And we're walking in mountains, and we're talking, and we're sitting by a campfire, and there's some Native Americans there. And then there's a bunch of candles, and people are chanting and singing a song. And there's some famous people that are dead, and they're there, and they're like having a good time. And okay. And then he's sitting at the edge of my bed, and he says, do you understand why I killed myself? Do you understand that? Do you understand why I did that? And I did. And I woke up and I started Googling this person. I started like being like, what the fuck was wrong with this person? And he starts talking about his stomach in these interviews. And in the interviews, I was like, wait, maybe I should see a gastroenterologist. Maybe I should see a stomach doctor. Maybe something's wrong with my stomach. Maybe I'm not producing enzymes. And I started looking for a gastroenterologist or someone who would look at my liver enzymes or my digestive enzymes. And I found out that I found the doctor that I have today, and the doctor did my blood work, and he's like, a normal person can have a half an inch of mercury in their bloodstream. You have not been able to detox mercury since you're born, and you have like 2 or 3 feet of mercury in your body. Your body is dying.
Good Lord.
You have every right to be suicidal, but you have the MTHFR mutation. I will get you back. Give me 8 weeks. Don't do shit. Give me 8 weeks and I will get you back. And that was all within 40 days.
Wow. Yeah,
so That's
I
it.
understand the alternatives and giving God timelines. I did it, and I leaned over the edge a couple times, and he also within a few days pulled me back, and he had a month. I was like, oh well, that didn't take long, So it's like when you give him alternatives, he just kind of shows up. He's like, all right, they're done. Finally, they're done.
They've given up.
Yeah,
I got this for you, baby. I got this for you.
yeah,
You're my babe. You're my baby. I'm in you.
yeah,
Let me carry you.
yeah, yeah. Finally ready to surrender.
Yep.
Can't do anything without surrender, and that's the big
That's
thing.
surrender.
Even for yourself, without surrendering to the things that haunt you.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things, and I've found, is those dark voices that talk to me, that turn into anger and rage. I now, I don't fight back, and I hit my knees when I get angry or frustrated. More frustrated before I get angry. And what I think that's done for me is I'm putting my ego to sleep, to rest,
Yeah.
instead of trying to control the outcomes of my life. It no longer has that space. And so it's really interesting to grow in this way and move away from this toxic thinking that I've always had. One thing I know I told said we gotta go, but the oh hell, I forgot. The train left the station. Bye. Bye.
Okay.
Spanish train, it's gone. Yeah.
I've had such a wonderful time with you, Britton, and I hope to come back and continue this conversation because I feel
Yes.
like, I'm just so curious about the space that you're in and what's going to manifest as I find the other shore and this book is out in the world and
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. This has been great. And again, I totally have enjoyed this. Love your artistic nature. I love your website, and the book is fantastic. I can't wait to kind of delve into it a little bit deeper and get some more information out of it and kind of be inspired by it. So, yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. Thanks for being part of this and supporting such a taboo thing.
Oh, it's the underground, baby. I love it.
All right. All
It's
right.
important. It's important. People need a place to go to get away from the toxicity of the modern society. So
Yeah, for
let's
sure.
give people a space to talk, to converse and hear and collaborate in it.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Thank you so much. And we'll see you on the good side.
Okay. All right.